broadcast network, AFTERBUZZ TV. Over 20 million weekly downloads in over 150 countries, and your number one source for after-show entertainment. AFTERBUZZ TV, the destination for TV superfans. Producing aftershows for over 300 of your favorite TV shows. Interviewing celebrities and showrunners. And bringing you behind-the-scenes exclusives. All thanks to E! Entertainment's Maria Menounos, producer Kevin Undergaro, and internet leader Akamai. Now, let the buzz begin!
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another epic season of Reign here on AfterBuzz TV as we discuss Season 3, Episode 1, 3 Queens, 2 Tigers. Although we only actually saw 1 tiger in this episode, I believe the second tiger is, of course, Mary, Queen of Scots. That's right. That is the theme song that we so know well and love, but we didn't get that tonight either because there was so much to go over. That is the Lumineers. Check that out because we'll be hearing that a lot. We've got a lot of episodes to go. I am your host, Phil Svitek. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I am doing the show solo tonight. I've saved 2 mics for JB Zimmerman and Keaton Markey right over there when they come back. Much like the actual show of Reign, people are scattered throughout all of Los Angeles, and we're getting back together. So for the first episode, it will be me, and henceforth we'll have the rest of the team as well. You might see some new faces as well, just like the actual show. And speaking of that, we'll also try to shoot for guests as always, and just overall have a very good season. I know you guys like listening and watching to us, so we definitely appreciate that. We want to make this as fun a season as in the past. So lots to go over, so much, and of course we'll do Castle Corner. That segment will be back. We'll be doing that a little bit later. There's plenty of news and gossip, especially that this is the first episode. Lots to discuss there, and of course all predictions for basically the entire season. So this will hopefully be a very jam-packed episode for you guys. Let's start with Greer, because Greer has kind of, since last season we thought perhaps her storyline might be a little bit more diminished, but no, her storyline went back up last season. She was quite important, especially towards the end. And now she's important again. And it's interesting kind of to note her profession in all of this. Obviously, she is a madame, but she's always there for Mary in the right ways. And tonight, because money is needed to aid Scotland, we get a pirate. And one of the things that about this season has been teased is we'll obviously get a lot more characters. And so whether or not Martin de Lambert stays longer than this episode, I think he will, especially with the way he really dug into Greer's skin tonight. Obviously, he made so many promises to her and got her into bed, all for naught. But, the plan in the end worked, and money has gotten there. Yeah, but it's interesting, it's one of those things, and this can be male or female, but when someone says, "Oh, it doesn't mean much to me," in the case of Greer, when she says, yes, she's upset by it, but that's not going to irritate her, or she's not going to think about it. The fact that she's looking down at him as he's leaving, and he does that really not creepy, but just rude wink to her, and then she kind of runs to the opposite side and sees him off. That's why I do predict that in terms of the pirate, we will see him again, and especially, obviously for the most part, any guest star that we do have, whether a couple episodes or even just one episode, they're for the most part male or female, good looking. But with him especially, I think it's going to really shake it up. She's still, Greer offers a lot in that she's still married technically, but there's little chance of her actually seeing her husband, who, you know, she did fall in love with, but, you know, obviously in the end, we've all sort of known and wanted her to be with Leif, and then with everything that happened with Leif last season, that's obviously not working out. I thought, you know, we all agreed, me, Keaton, and JB, and then for the most part, you guys, that was actually a good choice by her. It showed a lot of strength, and now she's got, you know, this guy. So I don't know. Could you call that a love triangle? Perhaps. Maybe it's just, or actually, I was going to call it a square because there's technically 4 people. But yeah, I think technically it's more of a love triangle because you know, she can only realistically go after Leif or the pirate. So we'll see what happens there, and we'll talk about the politics of needing the money in a bit. But I just want to kind of open it up with Greer, since, you know, that's an easy storyline. And whatever you guys think, just write it down in the comment section below, whether on YouTube, iTunes, SoundCloud. There's multiple ways of listening to us. All in all, the idea is that if there's a way to listen to us, we try to be there, so that way you have no excuse but to listen to us. And hopefully you do, and hopefully you enjoy most of what we say, if not all of it. And even if you don't, that's really why the comments are there. I want you guys to participate, interact. I really do love you guys as fans. You know, some of you guys have made holiday ornaments out of our faces, which is unnecessary, but much appreciated. I will bring in the shirts that were made for us last season. You know, when we started Castle Corner, one of our fans sent in a book on castles, which we'll be utilizing. Keaton has that tonight. I'll be doing I'll be going a different route, and you know, so that's the teaser. That's all you get right there. So all in all, thank you guys for being a part of this. If you've been with us since the beginning, thank you. If you're new, you know, welcome. The more the merrier. Reign is such a good show. I certainly love talking about it, and I specifically love talking about it with you guys. All right, so let's start to dive in. Let's go into Delphine and Bash, and then we'll kind of get into more of the politics of everything. So Delphine and Bash, you know, I've said this multiple times in the past. To me, the way they handle the supernatural is always very interesting, because it toes that line of, well, is it really supernatural, or is it just more superstition, for lack of a better term? And, you know, with Delphine, okay, she's a witch, crows are falling down and things like that, but you know, as she comes back into it, she says it's not her. There's an evil spirit, and that's what's causing it. And the reason why she chose not being drowned, but instead the fire, was that she knew she could escape a fire. And so it's always intriguing to me how they handle it, and I really like that subtle line. You know, everyone's searching for Delphine per Bash's orders. Certainly they don't know why Bash is fully interested in this, and you know, that's because of the mark on his hand. And when one of the guards comes back in and says she got away, he sort of knew right away what had happened. And as the guard says, you know, how did you know? Oh, I saw you walking in without a prisoner. Okay, great. So there is that connection to them, and how far it goes, we'll see. I mean, you know, there's that physical connection, but it's always been interesting. Delphine and Bash, obviously, there's also a romantic side to them. And, you know, right now, Bash isn't really dealing with all the things that certainly Francis and Mary are dealing with. I don't think he's even been brought up to speed necessarily on this stuff. You know, it's primarily been Narcisse who's sort of dealing with the more major stuff with Francis and Mary. So Bash is kind of left on his own, even though he is technically the right-hand person of King Francis. And, you know, this is sort of his mini adventure, mini not vendetta, but certainly he needs answers here. We'll see how it develops. I believe her. And in terms of what this evil spirit will be, we'll find out. Again, the hardest things for me to predict are these supernatural things, because ultimately where they end up, I never know. And for those, and part of it is, no offense to Reign, they tend to not necessarily be my favorite because it is so far removed most of the time from the politics of everything, that with everything else going on, it just seems a little bit, it just seems like it's not, a little unnecessary. And so if you guys have further thoughts on that, do let me know, because for me it's always very much a guessing game that I just get wrong, unfortunately. So, but one of the other characters that we didn't quite see tonight was Kenna. What she's doing and things like that, we'll certainly hopefully find out more of, but we didn't really get her into tonight, the episode, so we'll see. Now, all the rest of these characters, Narcisse, Lola, Frances, Mary, Catherine, Elizabeth, and obviously our pirate, all of them are now, this is where we get into the politics of it all, and for me, the very exciting stuff. And first and foremost, we start off this season by going to England. And it's funny to me how we have the lower third for England, and we've never really, once we come back to France, we don't necessarily need it. We just kind of know where we are because we've been here so many times. But it's good to see England. In terms of, but let's take a step back. This entire episode starts off with Mary and Frances kind of back together in each other's arms. She's dancing, he's building a boat, and the way he says it's there's things that matter and there's things that don't, and she says to him, no, we're the king and queen, there's other things that matter, like than building a boat, and we have to tend to these things. And obviously she finds out the truth later on, but in that moment, certainly for her and us as the audience, upon first viewing, we don't quite necessarily know what that means. But the reason, he's having this conversation with Mary about there's things that ultimately matter, and with Lola, is because Frances knows he has a timestamp on his life. Now, what it is, he doesn't know. We don't necessarily know. But there it is, and he will die. And so that's, for lack of a better term, he's trying to get his affairs in order through all of this. He's trying to set up Mary for the best possible position, so that way, when he does die, she is set up to still continue and be able to rule in the way that she needs to do, so that way Scotland is safe. Which obviously in this episode starts to hinder because they're running out of money to be able to do so, and obviously the information gets intercepted, but they could have almost been cut off from the Pope and the Vatican, which if that were to happen, obviously that's the whole source of their income, and it would have been bad. But before we fully dive into that, as I said, he's getting his affairs in order, and that's why he also, when he's dealing with Lola and the baby there, he's very much concerned about Lola and Narcisse, which he has a right to be. He has the right to speak out about his opinion, but if he was to do that, I think he also should have told Lola, don't repeat this or anything like that, because now Lola, she ends up going to Narcisse and kind of telling him this information. And I'll talk about Lola and Narcisse and their relationship, but I thought it was in terms of lining up your affairs, I thought that was a bad move by Frances to be playing in that way. And I also do think, obviously Lola will find out through Mary what's going on with Frances. I think perhaps, I think she deserves to find out from him, and and he should tell her directly. But I think ultimately Lola's going to find out from Mary, because Mary finds out the truth from Francis tonight as to why he is acting the way he is, which obviously breaks Mary's heart. And they're trying to figure things out of what to do there. Now, Narcisse has always been to me a very interesting character. I love this guy to death. I really do. I think since last season, he's been one of the best characters on this entire show. And the reason for that, here's a guy who people wanted his head, including myself, and now he's such a great ally to Francis and Mary, and his ultimate motive, it's so interesting because you never quite know what it fully is. Is it to regain power? Although, I think as long as he has power, I don't think he necessarily needs to be the king. I think he just needs a way to be the puppeteer, and I think that's what he's doing. Not to the full extent of meaning, but obviously, at the very least, he has a good working relationship with Francis and Mary, and he's the one that's delivering this information to him. Now, Lola, on the other hand, obviously says he's shrouded by blackmail and this and that, and so that's not necessarily a world that she wants to be a part of. And I really liked the way he spoke to her, in the sense of, you've been with boys your entire life, the current king included. What you need is a man. And we've seen Narcisse. Last season we applauded him for the way he turned down the princess, but now the way he turns down Lola, the fact that he says to her, "I'm willing to wait," the fact that that he stands above it, and he doesn't want to just have a fling with her, the fact that he wants something more, and I think that's very noble. I thought that was a very well written scene, well acted scene, all around. And from the character's perspective, I thought Lola just made a mistake. I really did in her telling that Francis forbids it, because obviously, well, Francis needs Narcisse, and that's my point. When Narcisse has, this entire episode, and kind of in the past episodes as well, Narcisse has been our source of information. And if he all of a sudden starts to get a vendetta against Francis because of Francis forbidding the love of Lola, will he continue to feed this information? That will remain. I think very much so. Narcisse controls the way. If you control this information, then that puts you in a great position of power. And I think Narcisse is not below using it to his advantage. And I think we've seen him manipulate Francis before, and now when Francis was in, and because the whole point is that they were two very similar situations. Francis was in a desperate time last season, although not necessarily dying, but the fact that Narcisse knew about the death of King Henry, and so Francis was being blackmailed for that. He didn't have many options. When you're put in a weaker position, and now one can argue this is way worse because he's dying, and so every decision he has to make, it's based off of that fact to make sure that everything's good. And so I think inevitably he'll have to make some sort of deal, whether he wants to or not, with Narcisse to ensure Lola and Mary's lifestyle. And yeah, I think he just has too much information too early in the season. I don't think it's good. But I actually do like. I do like Narcisse. I think he's a very brilliant guy, and I think he truly does love Lola. And I think he is right. She is scared to be with him. For what reason? Yes, we know their history, but I don't think she has to be anymore. So we'll see kind of what happens there. Now, the major problem of tonight's episode is, of course, Elizabeth, England, and the dying resources in Scotland. And as eventually we find out, or Mary finds out, Elizabeth and Catherine are working together. Catherine is directly feeding information to Elizabeth, which is in fact treason. Not to necessarily skip ahead, but it's interesting to me the way Catherine presented her argument to Mary and Frances when she was kidnapped or recaptured, of how she was doing this for France, so on and so forth. I thought the argument was well put, but I didn't believe a word of it. I'd be interested to know if you guys actually think that perhaps Catherine was playing Queen Elizabeth. I don't think she was. I really don't think. Not whatsoever. Obviously, I think Catherine will just say anything out of desperation at any given moment. But one thing that you can't fault Catherine for is she's got questions and she's always got actions. She always knows she has at least 3 solutions for any given problem, and that's what, at the end of the day, you gotta really love about Catherine. And to see the show now shift, where it's not just men in power. We've seen King Henry, who's always been a very strong guy, and we got glimpses of him last season, controlling Catherine even as a ghost. Frances has been struggling with the idea of power. We've seen Bash, but now to get and also we've talked about Narcisse, but to see Catherine, Elizabeth, Mary, and now the way they have to really deal, and they're in a prime position. We're no longer talking about just the ladies of the queens. These are queens themselves, and seeing Elizabeth is quite intriguing. There's so much pressure from her on her. One, to produce an heir, to stabilize England, all these various things. And, it's just, as Catherine says, men don't want to be ruled by women, let alone listen to them, which I think for the time is obviously very true and well stated. Elizabeth, for the most part, I think in the end, each of these women wants nothing different than what any male ruler would want, but the problem is, because they are women in this time, they have to prove themselves much differently. And so, while they, in the end, all 3 could have a very peaceful relationship, and I do think one of the reasons that they don't is because of the male pressure. Elizabeth's, one of her, the only thing that she, at least for herself, wants is Robert, which is very interesting, and she can't even have that. He's married, he's a lesser status, and it just wouldn't work out. He's a great advisor, and obviously she wants him near. He would prefer to be somewhere else, but so in the end, she can't fully make her own decisions. So instead, Catherine said, here's what Catherine proposes is the best case scenario. And of all this, doesn't mean it's what Elizabeth fully wants. Might not necessarily be, but it certainly gets Elizabeth much closer to what she does want, or at least settles the ground. And so the 2 big things are obviously, if money's cut off from the Vatican, from the Pope to France, then Mary will lose her power. Scotland goes by the wayside, so on and so forth. So you have that, and in the midst of all of this, Elizabeth proposes a sort of peace offering with Mary, and that's to be wed to Charles. And obviously Mary sort of learns the truth. While it may take Mary a little bit of time to really realize what's going on, that doesn't mean she's not smart, because I really did like her quote when she says, well, why is it so strange that Elizabeth might be proposing peace we always thought it would be me that would be making the truce, but why is it so far-fetched that she made the first move, which I thought in theory is, number one, it's great wishful thinking. Number two, it is noble. I think isn't that far-fetched, but obviously in this scenario wrong, because it just is, and immediately Francis brings back Charles and takes him under his wing, although there's that, when they're doing archery, there's that moment where Francis can't fully teach him because he has his spout of I think he was about to have some wheezing or coughing or whatever, and he didn't want Charles to see him in this state. Certainly Francis right now is trying to hide it as much as possible from basically everybody, the fact that he's sick and that he is dying. But here's Charles, who, per Catherine's suggestion, should marry Queen Elizabeth, and Elizabeth is not necessarily all for it right away, but for it eventually, and it makes sense. So that gets stopped very fast by Francis, but a meeting is set up. Now, obviously, this meeting isn't what it turns out to be. There we have Queen Elizabeth. You have her troops all waiting for the French, and instead they go and they steal back Catherine, and here she is with the pirates. And she says, we don't have many. We have plenty of jails, but none that move. And here's your tiger. I worry for just a great scene. Kind of Catherine just being so scared and all that. So there you have the episode. There you have my thoughts on the episode. Let me know what you guys think. I really liked how this developed. I thought for us coming back into this season 3, it came very, very strong. So much happened. I thought they were firing on all cylinders, and they've really set us up for what looks like a fantastic season. So I'm really excited. Now, before we fully dive into Kent's Corner, the news and gossip and all that stuff, we know Keaton loves the outfits on the show, and so I went online and I looked up what fans and other people thought the outfit of the week was, and the outfit of this episode is the gown that Mary wears when she learns Francis is dying. The sleek and long sleeves are perfect for reading letters sent from your archenemy, while the luscious skirt was basically built for soaking up tears on a chapel floor. Beautiful and functional, the best kinds of dresses always are. So, check that out. That is the outfit of the week. And here's some great quotes of the episode. This is a segment from Entertainment Weekly, their online publication. This is the quotes that they have, and they're calling it the Queen's Corner of Harsh Lady Truths. Men don't like taking orders from women. They can barely stand speaking to them. Catherine. They let me rule my heart, but what they want is a man to rule me. I won't have it. Elizabeth. And I am England's queen, and those who seek to replace me will suffer my wrath. Elizabeth. So, some 3 great quotes. All right, news and gossip time.
AfterBuzz TV News.
First and foremost, I don't think this is necessarily news, but Reign on the CW is now on a new time slot. It is now Friday nights, and the originals goes from that is because the originals goes from Tuesday nights to Thursday nights. So you have the Vampire Diaries and the originals sort of back to back, and Reign's on Friday. Now, is that good or bad? I don't know, but the viewership stayed overall stayed overall strong. Friday night we had 960,000 viewers, so congratulations to Reign. I'd love to see those numbers go up. Yeah, for selfish reasons. I love the show, and I want people to see the show as much as possible. I really do, and I The good news is, in my own personal life, I've turned a lot of people onto the show, so I'm very proud of that fact. And you, as a fan of this show, if you have friends, tell them about Reign. Have them go see Reign. They can catch up on Netflix and other places. And, you know, if that's all you do, then great. And if you want to be even more kinder, turn them onto this show. I hopefully they would appreciate both. Okay, now this isn't necessarily spoilers, but Digital Trend did an article about 5 things we can expect to see in this season, and they're very generic. So again, they're not necessarily spoilers, but if you want to tune out for a little bit, by all means, there's going to be lots of politics and power struggles. Okay, we're excited for that. You know, I think that's what we ultimately love. You know, and because not only is it the politics and the power, but it affects these individual relationships, and the effect that it has on that. That's what we love. We will get more Mary and Francis. I think everyone can be excited about that. We will get many new exciting characters. We already have Elizabeth, who we're diving into, and I don't think she's going anywhere. We'll see if our pirate friend stays around, but they've done really well with guest spots, and so I'm excited to see these various people. And we will have more love triangles and new romances, so we'll see how that develops. And drama in French and Elizabethan court. I think I would say we got all of those things certainly tonight, and so if it continues in that way, this makes for a very exciting season. Now, speaking of this season, this definitely is a spoiler. So if you do not...
Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert!
That's right. So if you do not want to hear this, tune out, but for about a minute, because I'm going to read some of this stuff. So, showrunner Laurie McCarthy spoke exclusively to EW about the death of Francis and why she wanted to spoil it before the season began. She says, "I wanted people to get used to it. There was no way around it in storytelling," McCarthy said. "We've done shocking deaths, and that's not the tone of this story. I wanted it to be an emotional journey that we all went on and that we could all feel the highs and lows of, and I want it to be a love story. I didn't want it to be something that shocked the fans or really anybody. I needed to process it too. By spoiling it," McCarthy says, "fans will be heartbroken, but you won't be reeling. I think it's better to reel with them and to be with the characters as they process it." And there's also the fact that she also loves Francis. I love that character, and I love Toby. Toby is the actor, so I just couldn't imagine doing it any other way. So, and yes, Toby has always known his fate. He just didn't know the timing until this season. So, you know, although a spoiler, I think ultimately it's dramatic irony. You know, and for the most part, the fate of Francis has been given to us. We just, you know, didn't know ourselves. Now we know it's the season. Which specific episode, we don't know. They've done really well with shocking deaths, but now let's enjoy our time with Francis, because it is going to be that dramatic irony, you know, of when it'll happen, and it's going to be a fun ride. All right, a segment that you guys have grown very fond of, Castle Corner, and today we go in elsewhere. We don't go into England, we don't go into France, or any European country for that matter. I figured we'd do a little something different. We go to Japan, right? And so we're going to talk about Okayama Castle. And it is a Japanese castle in the city of Yokoyama. You know, for those of you watching, there's some pictures, you know, that you can check out. If you're listening on audio, just look up Yokoyama Castle on Google, and you'll see it. Maybe I'll probably post some on my Instagram at PD Svitek if you want to check that out. But there are two of the watchtowers survived the bombing of 1945 and are listed by the National Agency of Cultural Affairs. Now, okay. Let's start with the history of this, right? So the construction of this castle was started in 1573 by Yukita Naomi, and it was completed by his son in 1597. So about just over a 20-year gap there. And then the son, he sided with the ill-fated Toyotomi clan at the Battle of Seginahara, and he was captured and exiled to prison. The castle and surrounding fiefdoms were given to, and by the way, I apologize as I am probably butchering all of these names, but I am doing my best with them. So the castle and the surrounding things were given to Kobayakawa as spoils of war. Kobayaka died just 2 years later without leaving an heir, and the castle was given to the Ikeda clan, who later added the Koraku as a private garden. And by the way, so when you go and visit this, there's the castle side of it, right? But then, attached with it is this very beautiful private garden that you should definitely check out if you ever have the chance to go. And in 1869, the castle became the property of Meiji government, which is the Ministry of War. Like many other castles throughout Japan, the outer moats were filled in, and the old castle walls gradually disappeared underneath the city. And on June 29th, 1945, Allied bombers burnt the castle to the ground. Reconstruction began in 1964 and was completed in 1966. In 1996, the rooftop gargoyles were gilded as part of the 400th anniversary celebrations, and so there you kind of have it. It's made of wood, stone, plaster, and tile. So definitely kind of check it out. At least certainly on the internet. I think it's a great castle, and if you ever have the chance to go, I haven't been, but I felt there was something different. A lot. There's kind of what Castle Corner has taught me is that castles come in all shapes, sizes, architecture, so on and so forth, and there's really a beauty to them all. And I just kind of enjoy it. So there you have that one. Finally, let's get to some predictions.
And now, your AfterBuzz TV predictions.
So, for predictions for the season, I think Narcisse and Francis will have a very interesting relationship. I think Narcisse is gonna not necessarily. I think he's gonna use and learn that Francis is dying, and he's gonna use it to his advantage. And I think ultimately he will end up with Lola, and I would like to see them together. It's always been tough because while this show is historic, the storytelling tends to be a little bit looser. So we'll see if Mary and Francis actually get an heir. Obviously, that's a major thing. I think Charles is going to be interesting to see how he develops as a character. We haven't seen him for quite a while. The last time I remember seeing him, he was just a small child, and now he's not quite a man, but he's certainly much older and wants to learn, and I think this is going to be make or break for Charles, and it'll be interesting to see his development with Francis. So that'll be interesting, and I do think we will see the pirate back with Greer, and I'm curious to see how Leith fits into all of this. So we'll see. But thank you guys for joining me today. As I mentioned, we will have JB back. We will have Keaton back. So we've got a fun-filled season, and we've got some exciting ways. Right now, many of the actors are filming in Canada, but I'm working on a strategy to do some remote stuff with them where they can send us questions that we ask them. They can shoot it on their iPhone. So that's something that I'll work towards, and that way we can get them on throughout the season. And then hopefully when the season ends, we'll get them in studio to really discuss with us. Thank you guys for being amazing fans, as always, and just comment along. That I love talking with you guys. I really people ask me all the time, wait, you watch Reign? And yes, I proudly say I watch Reign, and I like Reign, and I like talking about it with you guys. So until next time, we'll see you here next Sunday for another Reign After Show here on AfterBuzz TV. Bye.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
See you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.